Hey everyone, I am not sure if I'm live yet. I didn't do any fancy intro today. Just been working on the network for the last couple of hours. Here we go. Let's see if I'm definitely live. Hey everyone. Yep. Okay, cool. All right, welcome. If you keep piling in or keep making your way in. Hey Joe, yep, I'm live. I know, no notice whatsoever, not even a thumbnail. This is really spur of the moment. I'll explain why in just a second. Let me just see if I can get the chat working. Hi Jeremy, hi Steve, hey Grish. I see you guys coming in on the YouTube studio chat. Let me see if I can get the on-screen chat working for a second. I was testing things. I did some network upgrades this morning. So I did, once I thought I had everything kind of copacetic, I just did a test stream just to test that out, but a private stream. And because it's private, obviously I couldn't test the comments. So I'm going to just check that out now and see if I can add the key over here into H2R to get the on-screen chats going. So just give me a second. Bear with me. Let's close that. Let's go here. YouTube. And also, I messed around a little bit with the compression this week on the DBX. So let me know if the mic is coming in a little hotter than normal, but if it is, that's okay. I like the levels that I'm seeing. I just don't know if it's clipping out to you guys, but curious. All right, let me see if I can get the live chat going here. Yay, it worked. Okay, awesome. Open on display 2 and open this. And let's go over to social and see who is all here. All right, we got 9 people here. I have subscriber only on for 1 minute. So if you're not a subscriber, you need to subscribe after a minute to participate in the chat. Let's see, we have it on the screen. Yep. Hey, Joe, how are you? Not working today or on your way? Hey, Jeremy. Yep, I'm live. I made it after this crazy morning I had, which I'll get into. Hi, Steve. Welcome. I'm not sure I've seen you in the live streams before, but welcome. I appreciate it. As always, Grish is here. Hey, what's going on? Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. I was just watching quite a few mixer setup videos this week. And particularly, I found the guy who specifically talked about one knob compression versus having like an appliance like the DB or another appliance that has like threshold and output gain and all that stuff. So I really zeroed into it and made some minor adjustments. You had helped me, and we did this long distance over the phone about a year ago or whatever. And really, the adjustments I made were minor compared to the settings we had. So it's all good. I'm glad it sounds good. Steve says not clipping, sounds clean. Awesome. William, welcome. Thank you, William. I appreciate that. Again, I'm not sure that I've seen you here in the streams, but welcome. So, okay. What have I been up to? Well, this morning this morning I ended up swapping out the GCC 6010 for the GCC 6020 and figured I'd deal with the switches on a manual basis. Now, those of you who were with me last week, if you recall, I had tried a couple of different things to move the switches over without having to factory reset them and start from scratch. And Robert Ridley, I believe it was, had given me a suggestion in the stream that I tested offline. Unfortunately, that, it was a good suggestion and it made sense, but it didn't help the issue that I was having last week. Whereas factory resetting the switches, however, before factory resetting them, while they were adopted to the GCC 6010, doing a backup right on the switch itself, factory resetting them, and then adopting them into the GCC 6020, and then reloading the settings, the switch was fine, but the GCC couldn't read anything on the switch, right? So that's where we were last week. And I did some more testing this week. And came to the conclusion that it's one-way communication from the GCC platform to the GWN switches. I wish it was two-way, but I came to the conclusion that it's not. Now, that said, I did reach out to Grandstream again, because if you remember, I opened up a ticket with them, and I mentioned that they had kind of left me up in the air. So I wrote back to them on Monday saying basically, thank you for the response. And, but you kind of left me hanging, you thanked me for the information and said, have a great day. But where do we go from here? So I got a nice response from them. Let me pull that up and I'll share that with you real quick. Nope, I don't want that. Here we go. I should be able to access the ticket. I know they closed it, but I should still be able to access it. No, I guess not. Oh, wait. Filter is set to open tickets. Let's go to close tickets. There we go. Okay. Let's open this ticket up. Okay. So I'll just read it to you. There's no sense in putting it up on the screen because the text is tiny anyway. But they wrote back and said, I totally agree with you with regards to the response and thanks. Actually, the guy who gave me the response wrote back and said, I totally agree with you with regards to my response and thanks. I'll get back as soon as I get something. Then he wrote back 2 days later and said, I appreciate your patience while we reviewed this issue. Actually, to step it back, where I said on August 4th, so where do we go from here? On August 4th, they responded immediately. Please give me some time to see if we can find a solution workaround internally, then get back to you as soon as possible. And I wrote back, that's fair, thank you. I just felt like there wasn't closure of any sort with your last reply. Appreciate it and look forward to hearing from you. And that's when he wrote back and said, I agree totally in regards to my response. Okay, so now August 6th, 2 days later, I appreciate the patience while we reviewed this issue. At the moment, the GCC platform does not allow syncing local via Switch UI, switch configuration backups to the GCC portal. This is expected behavior for the time being. Unlike GDMS, which has the option to pull local config, the GCC doesn't work that way. Rather, it only reflects configs made through its own interface, basically one-way communication. As of now, we are verifying if the capacity to sync both ways will be implemented in later firmware versions or the portal updates. So, okay. At least, they didn't ghost me. They were responsive, and I appreciate that. And I just thank them for it. And, as far as the request, I just inquired saying, well, will you think they will consider it internally? And he said, I've sent the internal request to our developers. Please stay tuned. So that was what I got from the ticket. So I was pretty happy with that, right? So, yeah. Let's see, how are we doing on the stream itself? We got 8 people here, 2 likes. Okay. So that was the update with that. So this morning, I had gotten a call that I had to run out and do an emergency service call for a customer. Long story. That's one of the ones that I talked to you about last week. I had hoped this morning to get up early and start the migration away from the GCC 6010 and move everything over to the 6020 with the switches included. So that said, then I got the call this morning and I had to run out, and I honestly didn't know whether I was going to be able to stream today because I got back at around 10:30 from the call and started messing with the network, and initially ran into all kinds of problems. And I was like, yeah, no, this isn't going to happen. And I don't want to stress myself just because of a live stream. So I'm just going to take my time. And then all of a sudden, things just started to fall into place for me. I guess when I took the pressure off myself. So and here I am. So no time to prep a thumbnail, no time to even bother with the setup music. So that explains why I just kind of like appeared all of a sudden. So, and originally I was supposed to do this network upgrade yesterday, but the 10 gig DAC cables that I was waiting to arrive just never arrived yesterday. They were scheduled for yesterday. I was hoping if they came early enough in the day, I would do the upgrade yesterday and then actually schedule the stream for today. But that didn't happen. So they came last night around 8:30, and I wasn't about to start at that point and interrupt TV and all that stuff because the missus would not be too thrilled. So anyway, and yes, just a casual stream. Just casual stream. Exactly. All right. So that said, now you kind of have the history. So we'll talk about the service call later. I want to talk about the network upgrade and what I ended up doing. So let me get the camera ready here. We'll go take a walk back there and I'll show you the overview. Let's see. Okay. So we are here and here. And just waiting for the camera to pick up. Let's go. Oh. I know I'm on the, hold on, I'm on the wrong network. I switched SSIDs to set up, turn the lights on. Hold on. There we go. Appreciate the patience, folks. It's been a hell of a morning. So, just bear with me. Okay. Now let's try that. There we go. Okay, I'm going to switch mics. Check 1, 2. Let me just check the levels on the ATEM. Check 1, 2. Check. Mic check 1, 2. Check. Check. Okay, so let's go to the back. Yeah, it would help if I switch cameras now, wouldn't it? Boy, one of those days. Here we go. Told you, I'm a little frazzled right now, but it's all working, I think. All right. All right, so there's the rack. So what we got on top is the GCC 6010 which I had sitting here on the shelf next to the two Bose amplifiers. I just had these stacked originally. And then up top here in this first U, I had the edge router in there for the longest time, because when I swapped from the edge router to the GCC 6010, I wanted a little bit of an insurance policy until I gained a little confidence and faith in the new router. So I had left the edge router in the rack just in case I had to do a quick plug and switch. But now they're both up here. I had the room on the shelf, so I moved the amplifiers side by side, and then I rack mounted the GCC 6020 here, and then I also swapped out the 7800. This used to be the 7803 non-PoE switch, and now it is the 7822P. Now I do have two ports not plugged into the switch yet, because I need to get longer cables. I don't want to plug them into the 2.5 gig ports, because that would be wasting those ports. So, and they're not connected to anything elsewhere in the house. They're just they're available ports, so I'm not too worried about that. But what I do have here is I have the 10 gig SFP Plus port on the GCC 6010 connected to the 10 gig port here on the 7816P, and I'll show you that when we get into the software. And I am connected at 10 gig, and then I have, coming from the 7816 over to the 7822, I have another 10 gig connection, and we are connected at 10 gig, which I will show you that in the software as well. At first, this link wasn't lighting up. I was running into all kinds of issues, which I'll explain when we go back to the computer. But everything seems to be up and running. I'm kind of surprised, to be honest with you, because there's so much going on this network. But so that's it for now. I really will clean that up eventually. These two guys right here that I have Velcro tied together, those are the two ISPs. So ISP 3 is, or port 3 is my main ISP, and port 4 is the backup ISP, which the backup box is right there, the modem router. And yeah, so I do still have port 5 available on the GCC 6020, and that's a 2.5 gig port. So eventually, if one of these two providers offer speeds faster than gig, well, actually, I know this one does. It's just I don't want to pay for it right now. So let me rephrase that statement. If and when I decide to go beyond 1 gig symmetrical internet, then I have this port available to do so. But for now, I just use 2 ports there, 2 1 gig ports, since that's what I have. So that's the those are the upgrades I did. I swapped out this switch, and then we'll talk about all that when we get back to the computer. We'll check the comments now when I go back. All right. Guys get to see where I'm sitting and my mess. All right. And hopefully I didn't make you too sick. Okay, switching back to the studio mic. Let's see what folks are saying in the comments. Uh, 8:30 would be the perfect time if I were single, but not for me. Not at this point in my life. Not when I have someone else to account for and account to as far as who wants to watch TV. So, but otherwise, yes, I would have personally no problem starting a project at that hour of the night or evening. And Jeremy says, you married folks always have to factor in spousal approval factor. Absolutely. If you want to continue breathing. Jeremy's saying hello to Joe. I'm coming for your number one position. Jeremy, I'm a little out of context. I don't know like what you mean by that. Oh, I get it. That rating thing. I don't pay close attention to that stuff. So I didn't realize, but it just clicked in. Let's see. Coming for Joe's number one rating. Okay, I see it now on the screen. So funny. All right. Got it. Williams is working. Very few retired people doing this level of networking. Well, I try to keep pushing myself, keep learning more and more. So now I have, based on what I show you, I have a complete 10 gig backbone, at least on the infrastructure, with the exception of this switch right here that's in the AV rack. But that's okay. But everything in the main closet is a 10 gig backbone. So, and both of those switches have available 10 gig ports on them if I still needed to do more, add more devices at 10 gig. So right now, the only devices I have that are 10 gig are the Mac Studio computer, which is connected via 10, the DS1621, which is connected via 10, and I do my video editing over the 10 gig network that way. And then I have the Ugreen NAS, which also has a 10 gig card, which is currently connected at 2.5 gig because I need one more. It's an RJ45 port on the back of the Ugreen, and I need to get an RJ45 module cage to put in the 10 gig port on the switch to make that a 10 gig connection. So Gen Z detox day. And new here, do you switch to Grandstream equipment? Yes, and welcome, William. And I switched technically to Grandstream myself in 2021. I had installed Ubiquiti / Unify networks up until that point. By the way, which have been solid. I have not had any reason to replace any of my customers' networks. I keep them upgraded. The ones that are getting older, beyond like 6-7 years, I do upgrade if the customer is willing. But when I do upgrade, I do replace with Grandstream at this point, because I've moved to Grandstream for the residential networking side of things here. And that's pretty much all I do with QuickTech Solutions. I kind of stay residential, not high pressure, mission critical type stuff. I'm 63 years old and I really don't want or need that in my life at this point. I do this as a / hobby, passion, profession. And so every once in a while, I do get a corporate type job. We've done banks, we've done car collision, auto body places, those kinds of things. But I've done a few hair salons. But really, honestly, I do prefer the residential work. Although this week I had a couple of issues with 2 of the networks. I'm starting to even rethink that. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so I switched to Grandstream in my own home 3 years ago, starting with the Wi-Fi devices. I kept the Unify switches and the Edge router, but I moved to all Grandstream APs. And then a year ago, I decided to make the move over to a full Grandstream stack, or roughly about a year ago. And so things have been going pretty well from that aspect of things. Again, like I said, no issues with Unify. They just, I like to try to stay, I don't want to say reinvent myself or stay dynamic in a way, but I'm always looking to change. I'm always looking to learn. I'm always looking to grow, to be honest with you. So anyway, again, welcome, and I'm glad you're here. You should have long white socks and orthodontic. No. Well, you know, part of staying young is acting young, being young, doing things that young people do. You know, I'm not ready to give in to Mother Nature in old age. I know some people do. I mean, I know I have friends that are much younger than I do and have given in, and, you know, I see what's happening. So that I don't want that to be me. So, hello, Terrell. How are you? Thank you for joining. Welcome. All right, so we got 16 people here, 8 likes. Not bad for an impromptu stream. So, all right, so that's what I did this morning. And to be quite honest with you, you know, those of you in the Signal chat, one of you I was communicating with this morning said, "Are you streaming?" And I was like, "I'm planning on it, but I'm not 100% sure because I got this, and this, and if things don't go well." And so anyway, I text that person back at one point around 11:15ish maybe, and I said, "No stream today. I'm in the bit of a mess here." So, but then everything started to. Once I told myself no stream, then like all of a sudden I was able to focus, and things just started to come together. So I hate that under the gun, because in my head I wanted to go live for 12:30. Here it was like 11:15, 11:30, and not a damn thing was working, right? So anyway, so that's that. So here I am. Let me take you guys in. Let me get into. Let me get into the GCC, and then I'll switch over. I should be able to sign in this way. Okay, cool. Let me get off this screen and then bring this one up here. By the way, I'm finding the 60/20 response a hell of a lot quicker than the response time on the 60/10, which I find interesting. Okay, let me switch over to this. Okay, maybe not. Let me do it from the. All right, so I found one thing that's messed up. Stream Deck doesn't seem to be cooperating with me right now. There, and there we go. Okay. All right. So we're looking at the GCC 60/20. I'm in the network nodes page. And you can see here I have the 7816, which was originally in the rack. I had the 7802P, which is originally in this rack right next to me here, the AV rack. And then I swapped out, in addition to swapping out the routers, I swapped out the 7803 non-PoE switch for the 7822P. And I did it without having to factory reset them. So that was cool. All I basically did was leave them with their settings. I took a backup of each switch. Well, I didn't have to back up the new switch because there was really nothing in the new switch. So that one was from scratch. But the other two, I backed them up. I disconnected the GCC 6010. I plugged in. I racked the GCC 6020. The key was the configuration of the 6020. I did the configuration of the 6020 a week and a half ago, and I did it identical to that of the 6010. If you were with me last week, you'll remember that I said I tried downloading the firmware from the config file from the 6010 and trying to restore it into the 6020, and that was no. It said no go, not compatible, not possible. So, okay. So at that point, I decided I'm going to reconfig the 6020 from scratch, exactly identical, and I did it menu item by menu item until I got the whole thing configured so it was exactly a carbon copy of the 6010. That being said, that was the key, I think, to this working. And that said, so I unplugged the 6010 from the rack. I racked the 6020. I put that in place. I unracked the 7803. I racked the 7822. And then all the switches had the settings properly, but inside the GCC 6020, you did not see the switch settings as we talked about before. They were there in the switches, but just the GCC wasn't pulling them in because it's not a two-way sync situation. So what I was left with, and I'll show you an example of the 7802, which is the rack switch here. If I click on the rack switch and I come up to port, you'll see that there are no descriptions and there are all the port profiles are set to all VLANs, which was the issue I was encountering last week. So if I show you now the 7816 and I go to port, you can see here that I have all the information put in, but I put it in manually. But it wasn't a big deal because I took screenshots of the 7816. I took screenshots of all of this, and then I just sat there and I entered, even though all this information was already in the switches. Like it knew that this was the camera network, and it knew that this was the all VLANs, and it knew that the guest room TV was the IoT network. It knew its port profiles. The GCC just wasn't reading them through its own interface. So it was just a question on clicking on each one of these and typing it in and flipping the profile right from here. It took me literally a whole 10 minutes. So really, in the large scheme of things, I don't find that to be horrible at all. And what I did was I left the 7802 alone to show you the difference in the stream. Now, the other thing is, if I go back to here and I go back into the 7822, let's actually go back into the 7816. Let's go into the port configuration. And if you go down here, you could see port 54 is the uplink to the GCC 6020. You could see the link is up, and I'm connected at 10 gig here. And you could see the different color here. So port 54, that's a 10 gig connection. And then if I go into, let's see, this is the uplink port 50 right here. This is the uplink to the other switch in the rack, the 7822. And if we go to the 7822 and we look, we should see on port 25, that's the uplink, or that's the link to the 7816. So you can see if we go to port 25 or 28 here, I'm sorry, not 25. Is the uplink to the 7816, and you can see it's set to auto negotiation, which brings up a good point. That was part of the struggle that I had, and it was kind of self-created. And here's what I mean by that. When I plugged in the DAC cable, by the way, I'm using, I'll show you which ones I'm using. They were extremely inexpensive. And I hope I remember the point I was going to say. But let me show you which ones I'm using. But they were inexpensive, but they were a name brand, as opposed to the last time I tried using DAC cables on this network with the Unify network. They were just Amazon Basics brand, or one of those no-name brands, and I had all kinds of network connectivity issues. But these are the 10 G-Tech. These are 1 foot basically, and 1.4 feet, and for $9.89 you can't go wrong. And they're working. This one says here for Cisco, Ubiquity, Unify, Meraki, MikroTik, Fortinet, Netgear, D-Link, and more. Even though Grandstream's not listed, Grandstream. It's working. They're working just fine with Grandstream. So part of what I self-inflicted myself with in trying to rush and get this done so that I could stream, I had the port set on the 7816 originally for 1 gig, because prior to this I only had 1 gig fiber modules uplinking from the GCC 6010, not realizing it and not remembering because that was so long ago. I plugged in the DAC cable from the 7816P to the 7822P and nothing, like the link was dead, to the point where I was like scratching my head. And then I had ordered a third cable, even though I only needed 2. I said, could it be? Right? So first thing you do is check the cable. So I open up the new cable. They were all new, but I opened up the third cable, plugged it in, and nothing. So I was like, what the heck? So I said, all right, well, let me unplug that. Let me plug in just a regular Ethernet cable from a open port on one switch to an open port on the other switch, and I had connectivity. Now, interestingly enough, even though, going back to the switches, even though all the switches maintained their settings, VLAN traffic was not passing until I added the port profiles through the GCC interface that I had just shown you. And then all the VLAN traffic started to pass. So that was interesting. Even though the switches had it, I was having all kinds of connectivity issues this morning. But then the port not working was my stupidity, because I had set the one side on, the one switch to, I manually set it to 1 gig speed. And as soon as I plugged, here's where I created more stress for myself. I plugged the DAC cable back in, forgot to take out the Ethernet cable, went into the switch, because it occurred to me when I found that, oh, damn it, it's just change it to 10 gig, and boom, automatically it lit up. But I created a network loop. So it was like, yeah, because it was just, everything was moving so slowly. And then I went back into the room and I went, oh shit, still got the Ethernet cable connected. As soon as I unplugged the Ethernet cable, boom, everything was just like lightning fast. So it was a bit of an experience, but hey, you know what? I got to the end result, and I'm happy to say that everything seems to be working so far. I've only had one fatality that I could see. I tested all my TVs on the IoT network. I tested my access to Plex. I tested all my IoT devices are working beautifully. The only fatality that I have so far is of my 3 security cameras. The Synology camera that I have on the front porch is showing up as disconnected. And it's funny too, because that was in the original 7816 switch. So it didn't have anything to do with, like, I moved it to a different switch. So I pulled the plug on it and I let it restart, and it's still showing as disconnected. And I got to be honest with you, I hadn't checked that camera in a couple of days, so I don't really know. I can't say for sure if it's a result of doing this upgrade or if that camera was just offline for a couple of days and I didn't notice. So if that's the least of my issues with doing this to me, this was kind of a major overhaul, because but it worked, and I was able to do it without factory resetting the switches. So key point, if you're using a GCC router and you have Grandstream switches and they are adopted to the GCC router, you don't have to factory reset them and lose all your settings in order to adopt them to another GCC router on the platform, on the GCC platform. So that's really good to know. But the key for me was configuring that 6020 identically to that of the 6010. All right, I'm yapping way too long. Let's go to the comments. Joe's saying, don't give in. And that's in reference to the old age battle. Yep. No, I don't intend to, Joe. Glad to hear you're doing well, Terrell. Thanks. And thanks for being here. Joe said, I'm surprised you still stream. Usually once you decide it's permanent. Yeah, you're right about that. But I really wanted to stream today. I really did want to do this network upgrade yesterday and stream today, and then also update you on the things that I talked about last week with a couple of my clients. So, yeah. Carl says, I'm looking into upgrading my home lab to GS or Unify. Grandstream is a much better value. Is there anything significant that Unify had that the GS doesn't? I'm not an edge network person, just want reliability. So that's listen, if you're looking for a home lab setting, you're going to get everything you need on the Grandstream platform. You could have one pane of glass through managing everything through the GDMS portal. You can, Unify's been in the game on the prosumer side a lot longer than Grandstream. So they've, perfected their ecosystem a little bit more. It's almost like, that's like asking me, is comparing Synology to Ugreen, and that's what a lot of people were doing when Ugreen first hit the market a year and a half ago. So Ugreen's a great device. Grandstream has great networking products. Yes, they started as a IP phone company, but they have great, solid networking products. I wouldn't have them in my own home, and I wouldn't recommend them and be deploying them out to my customers if I didn't have 100% belief in that. Are there growing pains? Absolutely. I'm not going to lie. But you know what? When I first started with Unify 8 years ago, guess what? There were growing pains. So honestly, and when I say there were growing pains, I mean, one of the reasons why I deployed all my Ubiquiti/Unify networks with edge routers at the head end instead of using a Unify router was because I couldn't stand the original 3-port Unify gateway. It was, in my opinion, it was awful. So I had deployed every single one of my Ubiquiti Unify networks with Unify switches, Unify access points, but I put an edge router at the head end of every network that I managed. And does that mean I had everything in one pane of glass? No. The only thing I had in the pane of glass were the switches and the access points. I had to set up a USIP. At that time it was UNMS, but now it's UISP. To manage all the customer edge routers, which I still have in place. So, I think in a home lab situation, I think you're fine going the GS route. If you're into, Joe, I know you're going to like this, and I think you know where I'm going. Carl, if you're into all the fancy switch ports that light up and the ether little patch cables that light up because the switch ports are lighting up, and you're into all, you got to have a patch panel that matches and a rack that matches the color of the Unify, the silver of the Unify gear. If you're into all that fluff and stuff, then go Unify, but if that stuff isn't important to you, you'll be fine with Grandstream. So, hey, great question, Carl. Thanks. And thanks for being here. 26 people watching, making sure to hit like. Wow, thanks. Wow, well, we're down to 18, but that's not horrible. And we got 14 likes, so cool. Does the 6020 have a newer firmware? It's a different firmware. It's not a newer firmware. It's actually a different firmware. Interesting, talking about firmware. We're going to talk about that in a minute with the 6010. William, work a lot in installing and manage Unify networks, but do MikroTik and RAI as well. Depends on, size of network. Agreed. Are you doing, William, are you doing more like not residential, but more corporate type stuff or commercial type stuff? I might have to explain what carbon copy means to those under 30. You guys can Google it. Mr. Tim Tech, hey, welcome. And all viewers, hope all is good. I finally made it to your live stream. Well, welcome, Tim. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I don't know if you saw the beginning when I did the tour of the cabinet and when I talked about the actual migration over, but I'm glad you're here. Carl says, thanks for the frank feedback. My equipment is in the basement, not my living room, so I don't care about the light ports. Cool. Bluey, I got GCC 6010 for home use, not had a single problem with it in a year. I've had it switched over from Unify and haven't regretted a thing. That's good to hear. That's like the perfect segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about in this stream. But let me just finish going through the comments. By the way, guys, Mr. Tim Tech also has a YouTube channel. If you haven't checked him out, please do. He does a lot of Grandstream videos as well. He does other things besides the Grandstream stuff. He does Unify stuff. He does a lot of Reolink stuff. So if you don't know or you haven't heard of Mr. Tim Tech, go out and check him out. Yeah, Tim, go back. I think you'll appreciate that because, you know, we kind of chat back and forth anyway offline. So that's cool. Yeah, apparently. So I think I'm just going to go like, you know, totally unannounced when I do stream. So anyway, cool. 17 people here, 15 likes. That's pretty cool. I'll take it. All right. Now, Jeremy asked about firmware, about the firmware being different for the GCC 60 or being newer, not newer, just different. And Bluey mentioned that he's very happy with his 6010 and doesn't regret a thing. And I will say this, I am very happy with the 6010. I've not had issues with it. I did in the very, very beginning, but it was more ISP related than anything else. Ever since I resolved that, it's been rock solid. I have about 10 out in production right now, and I've had issues with 2 so far, and we're going to talk about that now. So last week in the stream, and it's funny too because I talked in last week's stream about a customer who's been having a lot of packet loss and a lot of connection issues and things like that. And I was pretty confident that it was on the ISP side because I did everything possible to troubleshoot inside. I even replaced a couple of terminations on cables. Speeds were fine, but yet the WAN connection was very unstable. So the customer was very persistent, and I think I showed you guys all the dots on the green WAN status in GDMS. So I had the customer stay on top of the ISP. The ISP came out, moved them off of a PPPoE connection, so off the PPP-ONT, which this particular ISP is now transitioning away from. I'm kind of happy about that, transitioning away from PPPoE. Put them on a DHCP WAN connection. And the problem got a little bit better, but it wasn't perfect. So then he called the fiber guys back again, the provider back again. They sent the tech out again, this time with a foreman. And this time They switched them off of that particular modem / router, yada, 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 and put them on. So they moved them this time from 1 GPN upstream in their network to an XGPN, which is just basically the difference is data transmission rates, right? So with a GPON upstream from a provider, you get about 2.5 gigabits per second down and 1.2.5 gigabits per second upstream. So they moved them to the XGPON, and the XGPON is capable of doing 10 gig down and 2.5 gig up. They told him he was the only person on the XGPON right now, so it wouldn't be saturated or anything like that. And for 36 hours after doing that, the connection was as stable as possible. And I was like, cool. Woke up this morning and checked the connection, and there we were back to all the red ticks in the WAN connection status. And I was like, so it leads me to another story, and I'll circle back to this. And I think I probably, I did tell you why. I remember I said, I forget when I showed you the G10 G-Tech cable on Amazon, did I circle back to why I was showing it to you? But yes, I did. I told you I created my own loop in the network. Okay. Now circling back, another client, after I hung up last week's live stream, after I ended it, I checked my text, and a client who's been rock solid with the GCC 6010 for 3 months was having all kinds of connection issues and freaking out because his wife works from home, and this has got to be resolved, and one of those things. And I was like, okay. So I went over there. Everything seemed okay. Monday, I get it. He calls me again, frantic. I go over there again on Monday. I check everything. I test everything. Everything's up. Everything's running. And I'm like, the hell is going on? So on August 2nd, which was last Saturday, I believe, or thereabout, a virus signature update in the GCC 6010 caused certain GCC models to go a little wonky. Now, I wasn't aware of that at the time. I really didn't find out about this until I read Willie's community forum, which I'm a member of, and he had posted something that said there's been reports of certain GCC 6010 out in the field acting a little bit strange, and reports of boot loop, continuous boot loop, and also symptoms besides the boot loop. Other symptoms were the customers' networks would be going down and up, down and up, down and up. And that's exactly what this one customer's network was doing. And that explains why it was rock solid for the first 3 months of service. So now, fortunately, my 6010 had no issues. And the other 7 or 8 that I have in production are not having issues. This one client was. So Grandstream acknowledged it, released an emergency fix to fix the boot loop. And it was a PC executable program that you had to run. And then after that, they released an emergency firmware update. Run the fix, the software fix, run the firmware update, problem will go away. So I went to that customer's house on Thursday, did that, and he's been rock solid ever since. So thank you, Willie Howe, and your forum for keeping me in the know with things like that. I went over to my client this morning, now I'm going back to the GPON versus the XGPON switch. And when I started to see the connection issues again, I said, let me come over and run the vendor fix and the firmware update. And I was going to do that yesterday. I actually had an appointment scheduled with him yesterday to do that. But I had been monitoring his network since Thursday morning, since the ISP switched them to the XG-PON, and everything was solid, clean as a whistle, squeaky clean, no interruptions. All Friday, same thing. I wake up this morning and I see all the red abnormality ticks again, and I was like, ugh, should have never canceled that appointment. Let me go over there. So I went out there first thing this morning, ran the fix and the firmware update. So far, so good. So if you have a GCC 6010 and it seems to be acting a little strange, interestingly enough, what tipped me off was, let me see if I still have the picture here. I might not. No, I don't have it. So what tipped me off to this was the customer who I went out and ran the fix on Thursday. I said, please send me a picture of the router and the switches. I need to see the lights, because you can't, he's trying to explain to me and he's trying to tell me, I think it's this. I think it's that. I'm like, just please send me a picture of the lights when the issue is happening. And he did. And that was, the picture was the picture of the router showed the WAN port was connected, so the ISP was up. But I have two switches in that network, and I have the router linked out to two switches. So there were two Ethernet cables coming from the bottom of the GCC in ports, whatever, 3 and 4, 4 and 5, I don't know. And then because his wife works from home, I said, there's no reason to plug her into a switch. I'm going to plug her office, the cable coming from her office, directly into the LAN port on the router as well. This way she doesn't have to deal with those hops. Well, I looked at the 3 ports, the office and the 2 switches on the GCC 6010 when they were having issues, and those ports, those lights were off. So the ports were actually disabled, which shouldn't be the case. So I realized at that point that they are having the described issue that Willie was talking about in his community forum. And I went there and I ran the fix and I ran the firmware update, and we are all good. So yeah, that's that was interesting. So anyway, back to the comments. I don't know, Tim, if you're deploying GCC 6010s out in the field, but keep that in mind. You know, there is a fix out there for it. Now, that said, let me just go out to Grandstream's website. All right, here. Let's go to the 6010 and let's go to the release notes. Let me go here. Okay, so this is the firmware update after you run the executable file on the PC, from the PC. And basically it says right here, I'll zoom that in a little. It says right here, fix a constant rebooting issue introduced on August 2nd, 2025 by Virus Signature Library Update. So it's just interesting because that was last Saturday, and as soon as I got off the live stream last Saturday, my customer was like, my phone was blowing up, the one customer. So what doesn't make sense to me is they're saying introduced on 8/2/2025. I'm sorry, I had my finger in front of my mouth. My other customer was having problems before 8/2/2025. So I don't know how long the problem really was around, or how many people were reporting issues with their 6010s prior to Grandstream taking a hard look. But you know what? The thing is, they did, and they reacted quickly. So, you know, when you talk about, you know, is there anything that one offers that the other one doesn't offer? I could tell you my support experience with Grandstream, my own personal support experience with them has been stellar. But the fact that they released the So that happened. This happened on 8/2, and by Tuesday 8/5, they had the executable fix and the firmware out, ready to go to address the problem. You can't beat that. So, William says he's doing commercial stuff and small business, but depends also on what the client wants. Yep, definitely. Well, I'm glad you're here. You, Tim, and Willie are what got me interested in Grandstream. Yep, for sure. Yeah, and honestly, I've been a follower of Willie's for, going on 9 years now. And over those 9 years, we've become friends. And we do help. Well, he helps me more than I help him, but we do talk tech, quite from time to time. And I did field test them in my own home, and I am deploying them, and I do have a confidence level in them. But I will honestly say that I trusted Willie too. If Willie pretty much says he's got faith in something, I don't think he's going to put his name out there on the line either. So that my comfort level and my trust in Willie was also part of, what helped me gain my trust level and confidence in Grandstream. So Willie, if you're out there and you're watching, thank you very much for everything over all the years. So we got that. That's great to hear. Tim is saying hello. Thanks. I do have one. However, it's thankfully been stable, but definitely worth updating. So thanks for the heads up. Yeah. Although Grandstream does say, there is a note in the, I didn't read it to you, but there is a note in the release file that says, at the bottom of where the changes and enhancements, it does say, I'm not bringing it on the screen, I'll just read it to you. Note, do not need to upgrade this firmware if the unit was not affected by August 4th. It's not going to hurt. It can't hurt. So, but anyway, do what you feel comfortable, what your comfort level is. So, but yeah, so that's what's been going on. I don't think I left anything out. Let me see. Network upgrade. I have my notes here. Network upgrade, follow up with the Grandstream ticket. By the way, Tim, if you weren't here for the ticket, they did respond and they did say that right now the communication is one way, GCC platform to the switch, not the other way around. But they're actually, so they say, they're investigating potentially seeing if they can bring the two-way communication to the actual GCC platform. So that would be cool. Followed up with the customers, and yeah, so that was it. The other thing, and it's not really important and it's not really network related, it's just kind of cool. It's something that I learned about thanks to Josephus this past week. Toys, and as always, Joe is always notorious for getting Tony to spend money. Joe likes spending Tony's money. All right, so what I bought here, I bought these guys. Let me see if I can get a better view on the side camera. Hold on. These guys here, these are analog audio extenders over Ethernet devices. They're completely passive. There's no on, off, power switch or anything. It just basically simply takes a microphone connection, connects to an Ethercon cable you can see on the sides of the units. If you're not familiar with Ethercon, it's basically a network cable that has almost like a microphone XLR housing around it to lock it in place so it doesn't get pulled out. I guess that's the easiest way to explain Ethercon. but it's basically an Ethernet cable. Recommended to be used with shielded cables, obviously to minimize or mitigate the noise factor. And really, really cool. I mean, this set is from Gear IT. They do make more expensive sets, like Catapult makes a version of this. This was $60 on Amazon for the pair, so for the two. The Catapult devices are $120 per piece, but for what I wanted to test it for, the $60 for the pair would be fine. So I don't know if you care about how it works, but I'm going to show you. So I'm going to put that over here. And you could run, I mean, the lengths of cable you can run, I mean, you know, you could extend, I mean, yeah, I mean, you can go 100 feet easy. So I have a shielded cable here, which I probably don't need a shielded cable for this studio or for my testing purposes. And it's not Ethercon. You can see it's just a regular RJ45 on the end that is shielded. You can see the metal. I don't know if you see the shininess of the metal connector. So I'm going to plug one end in here. I'm going to plug the other end into the other side. Be right back. I'm going to get a microphone. Okay, I have another studio style mic. So I'm going to just take the one cable here and plug it into the female side into channel 1 like that. So I have a long cable here, so I'm just going to leave it wound up. And I'm going to take the other side and plug in the mic cable on one end, also into channel 1. There, so now I have both set up, you know, right? So there we go, like that. Let me just get this in here. I wish I had shorter mic cables right now, but that's cool. Okay, like so. And I apologize if you heard a pop. I actually accidentally unplugged my studio microphone from the mixer here. Okay, so I have the second mic plugged in via the Gear IT audio extender, 4 channels, connected with the blue shielded Ethernet cable. It's, by the way, it's a Cat 5e cable. And then I have a microphone cable coming out of the other side, going into the mixer. I'm going to turn off the studio mic, and I'm going to slowly raise the volume on the secondary mic. Let me just bring my mixer up on the screen so I could watch the levels and I don't kill you guys. Check 1 2, mic check 1 2, testing. Check 1 2 3 4, mic check 1 2. So the audio, hopefully, I see levels on the ATEM. The audio that you're hearing should be similar to that of the other mic, but it's going through this crazy configuration here. So Yeah, so there you go. I'm curious to how it sounds to you. Do you guys hear any noise? Does it sound any different? It might sound slightly different because it's going through a different channel on the EQ and the compressor, but the point being it could work and does work. So thank you again, Joe, for this suggestion. Talk about why Joe recommended this to me. All right, I'm going to switch back to the other studio mic. Check 1 2, check 1 2. I'm back on the other mic. Let's see. That's good to know, would be ideal. Naughty Joe, oh nice. Now I will be wanting some. So Tim says it was a bit distorted and a bit of noise. Interesting. Let me try something though, Tim, because this time I'm going to try plugging it into the same channel on my mixer so it goes through the same EQ and compression that this mic is on. I just want to see if you guys hear a difference, if you'll afford me that. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Mic check 1 2. Testing 1 2. Check 1 2. All right, so this is the secondary mic going through the analog extender through the same channel as the studio mic, the original studio mic. So the EQ should be the same, the compression should be the same. Does this sound any better, or is it still a bit distorted and a bit noisy? Let me know. Okay, I'm going to switch back to the studio mic. And I'm probably talking a little closer too because I'm holding it physically. But I'm going to switch back to the other mic now. Okay, check 1 2, back on the regular mic. Okay. All right. Tim says that is clearer. Sometime next month, I may be looking for a used Mac Mini 2 minimum. So anyone know if any good places to look other than eBay? Sounds the same now, better. Sounds good to me, Jeremy says. I'm coming back to your comment, Terrell. Terrell says, sounds good to me. Now you have EQ is good. Okay, so yeah, the when I was playing with the compression settings on the compressor this week for my own mic, for this mic, I noticed that the compression settings for the other channel, which would be the channel that the secondary mic was plugged into, are a bit harsher. So I'm going to play around with that offline and match them to be what I'm using on this mic and see, because I would like to know that this system is reliable, this extender, because theoretically you can plug in up to 4 mics. Each audio, the audio from each mic takes up a pair in the Cat 6 or Cat 5 cable. So with the 8 pair, you could run up to 4, which is why it has the 4 inputs and outputs on the front, 1 2 3 4, which is kind of cool and a lot less expensive than buying an actual analog snake if you needed to run like from front of house to mission control station. So anyway, it's been a fun experiment playing with it. I may do some recording through that as well, just so that I could hear back how it sounds myself. But yeah. Terrell, going back to your comment about the Mac Mini 2, mine is sold. Recently sold it within the last month and a half. Yeah, I missed out on that one. But anyway, yeah, I'm not sure of any good deals. Isn't there a website called, let me just put this together, macsales.com? I'm not sure if they do use Macs or if it's just accessories. Let's pull it up and see. All right, let's put that over there, put that over there. All right, we got 11 people still here, which is not horrible, and we have 12 people now, 17 likes, so that's cool. Let me see, macsales.com. No, it's just, oh wait. Do they have used? Yeah, here we go. Well, hold on, let's see. Let me bring this up on the screen. I'm not sure. Don't quote me. Let's do that. So I'm at macsales.com. Oh, new and used Macs. Check it out. So there you go, Terrell. And it's a pretty reputable site. I've only used them in the past for accessories. I didn't realize that but I thought they did. I remember, but I've never bought one from them. And then it talks about refurbished Macs explained, and they don't just refurbish them, they restore them to peak performance, yada, 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 tested, upgraded, and certified for speed, reliability, and sustainability. So this might be a better option for you than just buying off of somebody that you don't know from eBay. So there you go. So, yeah, so anyway, I would have loved to have sold it to you, Terrell, but because it was like literally brand new. I mean, it probably had 2 hours worth of use time total. Then I put it back in the box. So in any event, check out this site. You might get lucky there. Just for, I wonder see what the Mac Minis are going for. Mac Mini from $159. Let's see. Mac Mini M1, Mac Mini M2, early 2023, 32 gig of memory. Oh, wait, that's new. Select new and used. Let's see. Apple Mac Mini, late 2014. That's old, 2018. This has got to be. This can't be used. No. But anyway, check it out. I've never shopped the site for used gear, but, check it out and see what they have to offer. So, you're welcome. And that's about it, guys. I know I'm not going to be live next week because we will be doing a little traveling. But we'll be back, relatively quickly. But I won't be streaming next Saturday. I hope to be back in 2 weeks. Give you more of an update on how the network is doing here and let you know a little bit about, if I ever get that Synology camera restored, see if it's actually the camera or what. But everything's working. I mean, aside from that, even the web presenter I have on VLAN all to itself. And I mean, here you are, you see me, you hear me. So I'm pretty pleased with the switch over to the 6020. Like I said, the 6020 seems a little bit snappier as far as processing and responding to clicks than the GCC 6010. But that could also be, I do have the 10 gig backbone now going on. So, yeah, I'm pretty pleased. I'll keep you posted on the stability aspect of it. I'm not afraid, to try it out in my own house. That's the way I can get solid information and benchmark info. So, anyway, I hope you all had a nice weekend so far and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thank you all for being here for an impromptu stream. I'm pretty happy with the turnout, and yeah, that's about it. So see you in 2 weeks. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, and that's it. Take care for now.